Oldboy came out in 2003. Immediately it caused a sensation. At the 2004 Cannes Film Festival, it won the Grand Jury Prize. Over the next 2 years, it made a statement to Western audiences. Something is going on in South Korea. Now we know this. Parasite won the Oscar for Best Picture in 2019. Shows like Squid Game from Netflix broke new viewership records worldwide with a diverse audience. In 2003, however, the West hadn't caught on to South Korean movies. Let's discuss what happened with a focus on Oldboy. For fans of East Asian films, most accessible films came from Hong Kong, China, and Japan. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon's success opened the doors for more East Asian exports coming to even rural screens. It was possible to see Hero with Jet Li or Kung Fu Hustle with Stephen Chow in expanded markets. Around the same time, many East Asian economies suffered from the Asian financial crisis of 1997. The same year missed the handover of Hong Kong from the United Kingdom to China as a special administrative region. The SARS pandemic also closed cinema screens in the region, negatively affecting Hong Kong in particular. Yet South Korea emerged out of this period with a wave of influential films from now famous directors Bong Joon-ho and Park Chan-wook. Today, South Korean exports are mainstream in an unprecedented way. What happened? In short, South Korea opened up and had a lot to say. After the Korean War, South Korea still reeled from the devastation of a war with its northern authoritarian neighbor. It's hard to believe now, but for a while, North Korea actually outpaced South Korea's economy due to assistance from the Soviet Union. In 1961, the South Korean military overthrew the weak but democratic government that originally took power through the April Revolution. Park Geun-hye became its director in 1963 and ruled until 1979. During this time, the economy of South Korea grew through export-based industrialization, often called the Miracle on the Han River. Park Chung-hee and the government empowered family-led business conglomerates called chaebols, like Hyundai, LG, and Samsung. Also, Park Chung-hee was authoritarian and used political measures to suppress free speech. A South Korean intelligence chief assassinated Chung-hee in 1979. After this and substantial protest in the face of government crackdowns, South Korea became a democratic government after the first elections in 1987. Throughout this time, South Korea implemented screen quotas to ensure that movies seen by South Koreans in South Korea were made by South Korean studios. Landmark films from the 1960s, like The Housemaid, made up this new filmography. Even through the tougher 1970s, South Korean filmmakers made films and built an industry. After the 1980s, however, the kind of films coming out transitioned from quickly made melodramas to vanguard films. South Korea opened up its cinemas, but also created tax incentives to induce more South Korea-based filmmaking. Both the trend of opening up to new stories and government empowerment of cultural exports came to be known as the Hallyu, or Korean Wave. The Korean Wave came in the late 90s as audiences desired more movies like Shiri, a big-budget action blockbuster that was popular in Hong Kong and Japan. It was partially funded by Samsung taking advantage of the tax incentives, and it outgrossed Titanic in South Korea. It was quickly surpassed by the breakthrough of director Park Chan-wook, JSA, or Joint Security Area. Starring acclaimed actor Song Kang-ho, JSA tells a thrilling story of North Korean and South Korean troops finding common ground until differences between their vision of reunification leads to deadly results. JSA quickly became a critical and box office hit in South Korea, but it drew attention throughout East Asia. At the same time, Bong Joon-ho began directing his first features such as crime thriller Barking Dogs Never Bite and the true crime-inspired Memories of Murder. Ji Woon Kim made his breakout films The Quiet Family and the horror classic A Tale of Two Sisters. A lot of press and attention went to these films for their extreme graphic violence. Yet filmmakers like Im Kwon-taek, a legend whose career dates back to the 1960s, garnered international attention for historic dramas like Painted Fire. Thus, what we had in 2003 were entertainment companies like CJ Entertainment making Korean films and expanding their distribution overseas, Korean auteurs emerging in a post-authoritarian South Korea, and sharing stories of resistance that play with explicit, vivid imagery, and growing international festival and critical attention. In the early 2000s, Park Chan-wook, director of the box office hit Joint Security Area, began a trilogy of movies focused on revenge, starting with Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, a film about a deaf-mute man holding someone's daughter for ransom, prompting the father to seek revenge. The initial international reaction was mixed. For Oldboy, the second film in this informal trilogy, Chan-wook amped up the visual style and flair with a tighter narrative. Oldboy requires going in as fresh as possible. Thus, I'm not going to spoil it. The main thing to know, it's about a man seeking revenge after suffering imprisonment for 15 years. The other thing to know, it's an explicit and graphic hard R journey for the protagonist, Odessa, played by actor Choi Min-sik. The film came out in 2003 in South Korea, becoming a domestic box office success. It made the biggest splash at the 2004 Cannes Film Festival. Critics talked then about more Asian movies premiering at Cannes. New York Times film critic A.O. Scott said in his 2004 Cannes notebook, "What Europe was 30 years ago, Asia is today." In 2004, Quentin Tarantino led the Cannes jury right after the release of his two-part East Asian-inspired revenge film Kill Bill. Oldboy premiered, and immediately some people were polarized at the explicit imagery, but champions such as Roger Ebert and of course Tarantino emerged. Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11 took the Palme d'Or, the top film prize, but the runner-up, the Grand Prix, went to Oldboy. Throughout the following year, Oldboy received releases outside of Asia to critical acclaim. J.B. Russell of the BBC said, "It's a sadistic masterpiece that confirms Korea's current status as a producer of some of the world's most exciting cinema." After Oldboy, Korean cinema received increased attention and, more importantly, increased distribution. It was now possible to find Korean DVDs at Walmart. In Atlanta, films like Poetry and Mother screened at Midtown Art Cinema. Eventually, even the suburbs and smaller towns would screen movies like Parasite, as Korean culture, including K-pop and K-dramas, became mainstream thanks to Korean government support and streaming availability. Lady Vengeance closed Park Chan-wook's trilogy, but his career continues on with critical hits like The Handmaiden, Decision to Leave, and the recent TV show The Sympathizer. But his breakthrough feature, Oldboy, played a major role in telling everyone in the West that South Korea had something to say.